I am muted. What I was saying is there have been a couple reports I've seen of Israeli forces being ambushed. But the reports that I've seen, unconfirmed, of Israeli forces being ambushed are not in Beirut. For example, Al Mayadeen says an Israeli force fell into an ambush in eastern Lebanon. This is not eastern Lebanon. This is the west coast of Lebanon. So I have seen no reporting that explains what's going on in Beirut and why we'd be hearing this firing in Beirut. And the fire, I believe, is from the airstrikes in the past day, not from the last hour or two. Wow. Still hearing it.
This has been constant for like 40, like probably a whole hour now, but at least 40 minutes, I can confirm that.
And I will say again, the Israeli media has been suspiciously quiet about Lebanon the last couple hours, which makes me think there's something serious going on that they're not being allowed for the moment to talk about. Because that happens with Israel. They sometimes say, you cannot talk about this until it's over.
Crazy.
Wow.
I can hear something flying over. Or maybe it was a car.
We have been hearing a lot of gunfire from Beirut.
Or maybe it was a motorcycle. Got this video here from Associated Press. Drone hits oil sites in Iraq.
Now more gunfire.
So according to this, it's a U.S. contractor facility. Got some more gunfire in Beirut.
Just posted a video posted by I-24 News English's Ariel Oserin of large explosions at the Mehrabad airport in Iran, in Tehran, which is reportedly being attacked tonight. You can see it on my X account, which is pinned in the chat.
So a big target of tonight's attacks has been Tehran's major airport, or probably only airport.
All right, you ready? So we saw that Boeing 747 all fired up at Tehran's Mehrabad International Airport after the joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. There's that 747 on fire. We have video footage of that. There it is. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And now this has been geolocated. Where are we talking? So we have the exact coordinates, actually. We could pull this up on the map. We've got coordinates. So they figured out actually exactly where this happened. Airstrike on Sentinel-2. It is wild to me that people do this, that people are doing this. Wait, can we plug in these chords? Oh, yeah. What do you know? Take a look at that. So we have the exact coordinates of where a burning Boeing 747 was. It's probably on fire right now. Uh-huh. This is one of the most iconic things in the city of Tehran. It's the Azadi Tower. It's one of their big monuments. There it is. The Azadi Tower, right next to the airport. And people are driving around. Astounding. Astounding. The Almaty Park. It's a big city, 10 million people. I think 9.8. 9.8 million people living in this city.
That's wild, and there's shit going down every day there. Let's head back to Beirut.
Israel has been launching strikes in southern Lebanon tonight, reportedly. This is not southern Lebanon. I don't know if that's related to this, but Israel's been launching strikes for days in southern Lebanon.
I see shots going up in the sky there on the top cam. Tracer rounds.
Still hearing more gunfire. Sounds like some kind of plane overhead. Thank you, Criminy. TV Samsung, thank you. Jacob Pitchford. Oh, I think that's a civilian plane. You can see a plane on the top camera. That's a civilian plane, I think. See it on the top camera there?
They have civilian planes flying out of Beirut as the gunfire is going on, as they're getting bombed.
Birds in Israel.
I am looking at flight radar.
Now we have a couple super chats here. This is from Graham Gallagher, all the way from Europe. I think he's a Brit, maybe. He says, our thick and incompetent deputy prime minister does it again. Cyprus is not in it. Yeah, we talked about that. Your deputy prime minister, he tried to say that Cyprus was in NATO. It's a kind of tangential relationship. Cyprus itself is not formally in NATO, but Cyprus is occupied by the Greeks and the Turks, who are both NATO members. And also there's a Royal Air Force base. The Brits, of course, are in NATO, so it's not directly in NATO. But that's the argument he's trying to make. That's probably the basis for the argument he's trying to make. Even more curious than that is why he would be trying to make that argument. Why is he trying to make that argument? The only reason why you would argue that Cyprus is in NATO is if you want Cyprus to be able to invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which effectively says an attack on one is an attack on all. So it seems to me that...
Yeah, some people are just craving for that Article 5. They want it so badly. All right, let's see. We should have Jesse Waters coming up here.
Well, Dan, okay. But we're gonna continue this conversation. This is going to go on for some time. Ted Cruz says the Democrats they need 6 or 7 votes, and they don't have any yet for this Saving College Sports Act. And I had the chance to talk to the president as we were walking over to the event. Lots discussed, and all the bigwigs were there. Everybody have a good weekend.
Operation Epic Fury is penetrating deep inside of Iran. As tonight, we're being told it'll be the biggest bombing campaign of the war. U.S. forces are exterminating what's left of the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. The crippling air campaigns left them bruised, battered, and confused because U.S. Growlers are in the air, jamming Iranian electronics. So the regime is flying blind. Their drones are falling out of the sky like dead pheasants. The Growlers are scrambling their signals, or they're being shattered by U.S. precision rockets. American warships haven't even used our lasers. We're saving them for the next phase. That's on top of the Air Force sinking Tehran's drone carrier last night in the Gulf. Their Navy has nearly nothing left in the water. U.S. Central Command confirming that we've sunk over 43 Iranian vessels. Here's one of their crown jewels. Watch.
This commissioning sends a clear message of military self-sufficiency.
But probably the most important capability of Shahid Bagheri is that it can remain at sea for an extended period of up to a year, a feature that makes it a game changer for the Iranian armed forces.
Now it's at the bottom of the Gulf. We've hit more than 3,000 targets, and the operation isn't even a week old. And you know what else just got hit? The Ayatollah's bunker. The IDF struck it this morning with 50 fighter jets. It's also home to Iran's primary command and control center. Well, it was. Most of the regime couldn't be there to see it. We killed 50 of their leaders in the first 50 seconds of the war. Just incredible stuff. And now Iran's underground missile cities are being turned into ash. 13 of them have been blown to rubble. Former CENTCOM commander and CIA director, General Petraeus, says we are in total control.
We want to bring in the big ones, the B-52s, the B-1 bombers, and they are flying now almost at will. I would argue that we have actually achieved air supremacy, not just air superiority.
As Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said, we're just getting started. The USS Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, just arrived. It was last seen sailing through the Suez Canal and should be in the theater momentarily. Right behind it, the USS Bainbridge, a guided missile destroyer with state-of-the-art Tomahawk capabilities, and the USS George H.W. Bush should be next to arrive. That put 3 carriers in the neighborhood. And just for a little extra oomph, Ukraine's got our back. They've pioneered the most advanced anti-drone tech, dealing with the swarms of Iranian drones since Putin invaded. Zelensky says he wants to help. Maybe offer us these wild hornets. The Ukrainians built these beautiful, low-cost, fast, agile kamikaze drones. These Iranian drones can be a real nuisance. They're like mosquitoes. But we've been reverse engineering them and shooting them right back at them. It's saving you money.
You remember what you used to always hear, we're shooting down a $50,000 drone with a $2 million missile. These days, we're spending a lot of time shooting down $100,000 drones with $10,000 weapons from ours. So that's one aspect of it. Lucas, indispensable. As many of you know, and if you don't know, this was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little Made America on it, brought it back here, and we're shooting them at the Iranians.
You know who's getting nervous? The Russians. They've reportedly been helping Iran with intel, giving them locations of our warships and aircraft. Trump's not worried.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here.
The Iranian strategy comes down to this. hunker down and wait for America to lose its will and hit the Arabs and hit the oil to drive up the costs to the alliance. They're losing the war, so they're waging an economic war.
U.S. Navy carriers.
Their military is nearly neutered. They went from 100 missiles firing a day yesterday. They launched 8. Their fighter jets are Vietnam era. We're fighting a next-generation war with a country still stuck in the 60s. Trump's in no rush. He tells Time magazine this: "I have no time limits on anything. I want to get it done." The president wants us to keep going.
In Iran, we're doing very well. Somebody said, how would you score it from 0 to 10? I said, I'd give it a 12 to a 15. Their army is gone. They're just about, look, their Navy is gone. Their communications are gone. Their leaders are gone. 2 sets of their leaders are gone. They're down to their 3rd set. Their Air Force is wiped out entirely. Other than that, they're doing very well.
As for a ground invasion, POTUS says it's a waste of time. He wants the same thing as Truman.
What the president means is that when he, as commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, determines that Iran no longer poses a threat to the United States of America and the goals of Operation Epic Fury has been fully realized, then Iran will essentially be in a place of unconditional surrender, whether they say it themselves or not.
Unconditional surrender. We'll know it when we see it. If the mission's a success, the world will owe the president a debt of gratitude, because 1/3 of the world's population was within Iranian missile range, from Paris to Calcutta. And with their uranium stockpiles, their ambition was Armageddon. Trump's strategy: decapitate, then delegate.
As for the future of Iran, as the president has pointed to, of course it's in the best interests of the United States of America for Iran to no longer be led by a radical terrorist regime that chants death to America and is lying to the United States and the world about their secret ambitions to possess a nuclear bomb. President Trump does not want to see that.
Another thing on the back of the president's mind: oil. Cargo ships aren't leaving the Strait of Hormuz, and oil just hit $90 a barrel. That's an issue. But the Trump administration's confident that the oil is going to flow.
The bottom line is our expectation is, given the extreme success of our military, that the things that oil markets are concerned about will be less and less relevant relatively soon. It's something that we're following very closely, and we have a high regard for the military that is putting together a plan to make sure that we can get ships through.
The administration has about 3 weeks before the Arabs have to stop production. Eventually, they run out of storage. That's the window, and the president knows it. But he doesn't look worried. He's confident once the regime collapses, the Strait opens, full production resumes, oil and gas prices will plummet, and the market rallies. This is just in from the American defense contractors we're seeing. They met with the White House, and they've agreed to quadruple the production of munitions. They're going to fast-track it. Iran's in big trouble. Another domino could fall even closer to home. 47 sending Rubio to Havana. The president says this: "I'm doing it all. We'll fix it." You think Biden could do all of this? I don't think so. The president's on a roll. He's setting the foundation for peaceful coexistence among all nations. And he's even showing the Europeans how to save their countries and cultures. Thank God the United States has not sustained a battlefield casualty since Sunday. So the whole work week, no Americans killed in action. We hope Operation Epic Fury continues to be safe for our soldiers, successful, and ahead of schedule. Jim Hansen's a former U.S. Army Special Forces and the Middle East Forum's chief strategist. Jim, the fact that pretty soon we're going to have 3 carriers in theater, what kind of firepower does that bring to the table?
How much firepower is there, Jesse? I can't do the math on that. I don't even want to be the guys who have to. It makes the point that no matter where the Ayatollahs and the IRGC and their terrorists and their secret police are, they're going to feel the pain. You know, there's persistent surveillance drones above them. There's the jamming aircraft you mentioned. And even more so, the people are turning on them and now becoming informants. Whereas before they were the Stasi, Gestapo, secret police, informing on everybody. Now that's going the other direction. So whenever someone sees their, regime members, they can tell Mossad or CIA or somebody else, and bad things happen to them. It's a much better time to be us than them.
All right, so you're saying assets in the Capitol are ratting out the people that used to run the regime to Mossad and CIA?
Of course they are. At this point, I'm sure some of the regime leaders are turning. There's no future for anybody there, and the ones who are left have to decide. Do you want to be the last dead ender to die in a pile of smoldering rubble like they made out of Khamenei's tunnel complex? Or do you want to be the guy who gets to get out while the getting's good? There's no good finish for them in this one, and I think it's time for them to realize that and give the president the unconditional surrender he's demanded.
I mean, we're pretty fast approaching the point where there's not going to be much offensive capability left. Yesterday, they fired only 8 missiles. 8, Jim, 8. That's not going to cut it. How long do you think they can hold on for?
Well, once they get rid of the actual conventional threats, they still have a lot of asymmetric ways they can cause major trouble. The Straits of Hormuz could be shut down by sinking some tankers or something like that, even their own. There's terrorist opportunities to do things. There are a lot of ways they can still fight and still cause trouble. So we wouldn't want to minimize that and pretend that's not a threat. But there's a big difference between that and actual state power, which they are losing rapidly and which should give the Iranian people a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah, I mean, you get probably to a certain point where they're not thinking about beyond their borders. They're trying to consolidate whatever power they have left inside because it's about to get pretty hairy. The president says unconditional surrender. I think we'll know when we hear them cry uncle. What do you think that's going to look like?
It's possible they make a deal with one of the regime leaders who says, look, we want to try and survive and we'll do what we need to do. But that includes destroying all their nuke stuff, destroying their ballistic missile capabilities, and then stopping funding proxy terrorism in the region.
That's going to be an interesting one because that's all they want to do.
To report on it for the moment. We'll see what we hear later on. Well, we'll stay on this for a little bit more and see if anything. For a while, there was a lot of gunfire going on in the Beirut camp.
Yeah, it was insane.
Not really hearing it at the moment.
They could have used some intel before Saturday. What could the Russians possibly be giving them that would be useful in the battlefield when they're hunkered down below ground and have no command and control?
Well, look, the fact that Putin wants to help our enemies in a time of conflict is pretty awful because President Trump has tried very hard not to humiliate Putin, tried very hard to get a peace that he could live with. This is not showing gratitude in any way. He can send them to the best he can all kinds of information about American deployments, about where our troops are. We don't have troops, but whatever intel that they may have. But you're right, it's not easy for them to use it because you're down several levels within the elite, and they don't have great communications. They're shooting off what rockets and drones they have. They're shooting a lot of them at their neighbors. Some of them aren't long range enough to hit, say, Israel. It's a bad thing, but the president's right not to be concerned about it, although he should take Putin behind the woodshed privately after this.
I'm sure he will. The drone warfare capabilities now looks like they got a little bit better after Zelensky maybe giving us some of these Hornets. How effective can they be? They're pretty low cost.
Yes, they're low cost, and this is also very interesting. We have the Ukrainians at a time when they're fighting a war of independence, a war for their lives, saying, we can help. And the reason is because they are creating new drones and new technologies that are useful for the U.S., useful for our allies, and they're actually able to contribute them. Look, if you look among our allies, we want reliable allies. We want valuable allies. We want partners, not dependents. Israel is that. That's why the Pentagon has called Israel a model ally. But would you rather be in a foxhole with a Ukrainian right now or with a Spaniard? I don't think there's any question.
Yeah. How do you think the allies have been? I mean, Israel's punching above its weight as usual.
All right, we got...
You can pretty much see everything that's going on up there.
We got this going on.
Oh, look
here.
at this. There's a cargo transfer in the Stratotankers, too. You can send down more bullets, bombs, missiles, and food. I didn't know that. I thought it was only fuel. If that's the case, then you're just living up there in the air for a week straight or more. You're never coming down. You're never coming down. So, yeah, there you have it. There you have it. I would bet they've been up there pretty much nonstop. We have another massive super chat here from Saturn Dreaming of Mercury. He just did one a moment ago. He did another one. He said, keep up the good work, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we got a video from the 5 here.
Huge explosions rocking Beirut as Israel and the U.S. military continue to ferociously pound terror targets across the Middle East, escalating their strikes on Iranian air defenses and missile sites. President Trump posting on Truth Social, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. And Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt outlining what that means.
When he, as Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, determines that Iran no longer poses a threat to the United States of America and the goals of Operation Epic Fury has been fully realized, then Iran will essentially be in a place of unconditional surrender, whether they say it themselves or not.
The president telling NBC News that a potential U.S. ground invasion of Iran isn't needed because, quote, it's a waste of time. They've lost everything. They've lost their Navy. They've lost everything they can lose. Meanwhile, the Democratic resistance to Epic Fury is just getting started. The country is split evenly on how they feel about the strikes, but AOC doesn't see it that way.
The vast majority of Americans are against a war with Iran. Two things can be true at the same time. We can acknowledge the brutal reality of the Iranian regime and their murdering of protesters and targeting of people. And we can also know for sure that a forever war will not resolve that issue.
And Kamala Harris taking a moment at Jesse Jackson's funeral earlier today to hit President Trump.
So let me just say, I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming. But what I did not predict is that we would not have Jesse Jackson with us right now to help us get through this.
And RIP to Mr. Jackson. All right, Jesse, a number of these Democrats just weeks ago were saying, Taco, the president told these protesters he was going to help and he never did anything. But now they're angry that he's done something.
Yeah, I don't even care about these people anymore. Kamala Harris is a joke. She couldn't find the Strait of Hormuz on a map. And AOC totally discredited herself when she was in Europe the other day. They asked her about Taiwan and she froze. So forget about those people. They're not serious. The Democrat argument against the war is three things. It's illegal, not true. It's going badly, definitely not true, and it's unnecessary. And if you look at the last week, we've proved that it was necessary, because every time they send a missile or a drone our way or our allies' way, we have to intercept it with a THAAD, a Patriot, a Hornet, or a laser. That costs blood and treasure. If we had waited for the threat to be imminent, 5 years, 3 years, maybe in Gavin Newsom's next presidential term, the Iranians would build up such a massive stockpile of drones and missiles, it would have created a shield around their nuclear program, and any operation like this would have been unthinkably bloody and catastrophic and may not have worked. And it may have prevented, let's just go with the argument, President Gavin Newsom from even doing this. And then on his watch, we would have had a nuclear Iran who would have been able to blackmail the entire world. I didn't even know this, but 1/3 of the world's population is within range of Iranian missiles. If we had waited, it would have been more. I'm talking from Paris to Calcutta. We did the entire world a favor. This war was the last realistic opportunity to take this regime out, and it's going incredibly well. The drone carrier was just taken out. We have growlers jamming their electronics. We actually have attack helicopters flying over the capital of the country. Think about that. 6 days ago, we were firing missiles from the Mediterranean, and now we have manned attack helicopters right across their capital, leveling their command and control posts, and they can't do a thing about it because they're blind. The pace of U.S. operations is doubling over the last 48 hours, and the pace of the Iranian offensive effectiveness has just dropped. It's plummeting. The Israelis, they just lowered their threat level. They can come out of their bunkers now. Flights are coming out of Tel Aviv now. Their strategy is to cower and wait until we don't have the stomach for this, and to inflict enough pain on our Arab allies, hit an oil refinery or a tanker, so it raises the cost of the war. Pete Hegseth said it best. We have the will and the commitment and the munitions to see this thing through. And the President of the United States does not seem bothered by the timeline. Right now, you're already seeing desertions among the police, the IRGC, and among regime elements. If that continues to go and you see this ethnic fracturing around the perimeter of the country, remember, it's mostly Persian, but you got Kurds, you got Arabs, you got Baluchis, you got a lot of different sects. If they start to fracture and you get an armed outside group come in and draw this, whatever's left over of this regime out, it opens them up to airstrikes. I think the rest of the country needs to look at this. We are 6 days in. This is going very well. And I think the United States military is the best in the world.
Okay, I bet the panel would probably agree on that last part, if not a lot of other things that you said. Now, Kayleigh, I did notice that you were wincing every time we said governor. Gavin Newsom as President Newsom.
Yeah.
You were a little faint there. You know how important that.
Fell over. Try to make a point.
Yep. You know how important messaging is, especially in a moment like this. And that's what some of the critics are saying. Listen, the president has spoken about this. He's been very accessible the last few days, as he always is. But does he need to sort of land the plane on messaging here? Because he's got trouble on the far right, too. A lot of the MAGA base who were worried about this.
I think the effectiveness of this operation is landing the plane. I think the single most effective communication we've seen was the CENTCOM briefing yesterday. That was extraordinary. They should do those often. But as Jesse was talking, I was just looking up some facts and ensuring I was correct on them, and indeed I was. You had President Trump, when he left office, and this is something I'm going to talk to Vice President Mike Pence about tomorrow, a status quo in the Middle East that was rapidly going in a positive direction. You had Middle East peace accords. The first time in 25 years, I was sitting there on the South Lawn when Bahrain and the UAE said, we are going to normalize relations with Israel. 2 other countries came on board. I was told by people in the administration, if they would have been given a little more time, Saudi Arabia would have normalized relations. Not only that, I was looking this up and confirming the last 11 months of the Trump presidency, you had not a single U.S. service member pass away in Iraq during active duty. That's an extraordinary accomplishment, and it didn't come just on its own. It came because President Trump got on the phone with the leader of the Taliban and said, if you harm the hair on the head of an American service member, you will have hell to pay. and it paid dividends. And then you had Biden come in, and you had Abbey Gate, and you had all of these U.S. service members die at the Abbey Gate, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. You had immediate resuming of talks with Iran. The posture changed, and Iran grew, and October 7th happened. This was the time to strike. If not now, when? Allow these maniacs to get nuclear weapons? I mean, just today, you want another data point as to how crazy these religious fanatics were? Look at Trey Ink's reporting that Khamenei chose not to go down into the bunker last Saturday because he was confident that nobody would have the guts to strike him. Well, maybe you remember Biden. You don't remember President Trump because he struck you and the Ayatollah was killed immediately. Imagine if this wouldn't have happened. Imagine, God forbid, there's a Gavin Newsom presidency and the damage that would be done to U.S. service members abroad. You sometimes need to show your strength. President Trump has done that. Iran will never have nuclear weapons, and that will be the legacy of President Trump.
Well, Jessica, to the points that both of them have made so far, Jesse and Kayleigh, this issue about imminence and the fact that proxies were, fully funded, carrying out all kinds of terrible attacks, those kinds of things. We know that there were active assassination attempts that Iran hoped to carry out on President Trump. Where for you does the line come when it's imminent, not imminent?
Well, the right would have you believe that it's been an imminent threat for 47 years, even though we were sending birthday cakes all around. And Jesse says in 5 or 10 years, it could have gotten really bad. That would have given us a little more time to think this through. And you guys basically listening to you should just wave that mission accomplished banner and go back to that kind of era, because you're talking as if that this is a done deal, that we are so overwhelming them that nothing can go wrong, when the facts on the ground are that things are going wrong. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Reuters, NBC confirming that it was U.S. airstrikes that were responsible for hitting that Iranian school. Over 150 people dead, dozens of children. You talk about our new allies in the region, and I have given President Trump his flowers multiple times about the Abraham Accords, but the FT reporting that our partners like the Saudis, the Emiratis, Kuwaitis, Qataris are talking about withdrawing from contracts with us and suspending their investments. Oil prices surging. You love to talk about gas prices, up to $86 a barrel. The Qataris say we could get you to $150 a barrel, gas up 35 cents in a lot of conservative states. So that's not good for the midterms. And the Trump administration didn't refill the strategic petroleum reserves. You can say, oh, Biden depleted it. You still had over a year to fill it up. And you shouldn't go to war in the Middle East when you don't have enough oil. And now that Russia is providing the Iranians with information on where to strike American forces, so we didn't give the Ukrainians the Tomahawk missiles they asked for to take out the drone factories, the $20,000 drones that we spent $4 million on a missile per to take out. And now the Russians are helping the Iranians, and Bloomberg's reporting that we're going to ease sanctions, oil sanctions on the Kremlin.
Are you saying this operation's not going well?
I am saying that it is not.
Is that what you're saying, Jessica?
I am saying that there are problems with this operation.
No, tell the American people right now, is the American operation against the Iranian regime going well? Tell them.
I don't know how.
You don't know that this is an effective.
I don't know how you could listen to me say that we struck an Iranian school and that there are a bunch of dead kids and just say this is going great.
Jessica, he murdered 35,000 people. If someone made a mistake when they hit a school, that's bad. But that's war.
But you don't mention it. You just
operation is not going well. Don't lie about the war. Do not lie about the war, Jessica. You're lying to the American
I'm
people
prepared to come out and say
you know the war is going well.
I'm willing to say that this is a done deal.
He's ready to wave the banner.
I'm excited about this. I will get my banner out, put my beard on the line. I think by summertime, it's going to be an amazing time to be an American. It's going to be an amazing time to be all over the world because the sheriff is back. Listen, one of the things you guys argue a lot about is one of the biggest things was, how it's going well because they brought up gas prices. That was the thing. Or, we might be out of bombs. Those are the talking points. But here's the thing. When I'm anti-war also until my countrymen are sent out to war. Then I'm all for it, full regalia. Our troops are out there doing the thing. So you know what? High gas prices, no big deal. Food prices, no tech, all these things. Because you know what? In World War II, our American people who stayed home sacrificed everything to support our troops. So if the gas prices go up, and it's nice because we know why they went up now. Before, when prices went up, we'd be like, hey, Biden, why is this happening? Oh, Trump did it. President said, yeah, you're going to feel a pinch because this is what happens when you support the great American men and women who are just, if this was a boxing match, they would have stopped it. The president does not, I think Greg said this yesterday, I'm 1,000% behind him. He does not go into deals he does not know how to get out of. This is a completely different situation, and you keep bringing up things from the past. we've never seen a response from the Middle East like we have now. We're seeing this Iran is done. They are done. And the longer it drags out, it's not going to be that long. The president wouldn't put us in this position. He's proved over and over and over again that he's an anti-war president. And your talking points, and just keeping it real, every time somebody quotes media as a source, I and most of the American people laugh. You guys have no credibility. So whatever polls you want, the only poll that I'm seeing right now is there's no flags poll flying in Iran right now. So good on USA. Keep doing your thing, making the world.
All right. Half of that assessment was rambling, and the other half was like, okay, I could kind of get behind that.
Today, but the conversation quickly turned to Iran. Peter Ducey is our senior White House correspondent and co-host of the Sunday Briefing. Peter.
Yes, and Jesse, it seemed like everybody was kind of footballed out after about 2 hours of that meeting. So I did try to ask the president about this report that the Russians are helping the Iranians target and attack Americans. The president said he thought that that was an easier problem to solve than the college sports problem before he called the premise of the question stupid because he wanted to stay on topic. But it has been a big day here at the White House. The president and the defense secretary huddled privately with 5 of the main defense contractors. They want to make sure that even though right now they say U.S. munitions supplies are holding up well despite all the bombs and missiles that they need for Operation Epic Fury, that they still have backups just in case anything else blows up somewhere around the world. They can keep the homeland safe. Right after that meeting, Lockheed Martin came out to say they agreed today to quadruple their critical munitions production. And so that is exactly what White House officials wanted to hear. We expect to hear more of that from some of the other defense contractors who were here. There's an NBC report that is crossing tonight that President Trump is considering at some point down the line a small group of U.S. troops to go into Iran. So that would count as boots on the ground, but not some kind of a huge invasion. But no decision has been made about that. And we do know that tomorrow he is going to attend the dignified transfer of the remains of the Americans who've been killed so far in Operation Epic Fury, which is a weekend now. We expect it to go another 3 weeks or so, even though they say they are ahead of schedule, and the leaders in Iran are already down to the 3rd string. The 1st string wiped out, 2nd string wiped out. They're already working on the 3rd string.
50 and 50 seconds. So that's 2 presidents that have called you stupid. It must mean you're doing a really good job.
Yeah, and they were both in the East Room, so I think I should just stop going to the East Room.
You should go wherever you need to go, Ducey. You're the best. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Terrorists are mourning the Ayatollah, but Democrats are mourning something else.
I think this is a gigantic blow against America's soft power. I mean, the last time we took a hit like this was probably the Iraq War in 2003.
What? Obama tried soft power. Love letters, bribes, treaties. Soft power made Iran more dangerous. That's why Trump did what he did. If he'd waited any longer, we'd be dealing with 10 times as many missiles and drones. But Democrats say disarming terrorists is mean.
I know that bombs.
Looks like we lost the feed. All right, let's head over to Agenda Free.
I'll say that again.
There was a ton of gunfire earlier in Beirut, but that seems to have settled down significantly.
Mehrabad International Airport in Tehran. It's this. So just to repeat, the New York Times says, we've heard a number of reports that Mehrabad International Airport has been hit by strikes tonight. And the New York Times said 2 Tehran residents who live nearby said it looked like the airport had been badly damaged and they could see commercial planes burning on the tarmac.
Live.
AP reports reported clashes between gunmen and an Israeli force that landed on mountains in eastern Lebanon. Now this is not, Beirut is not eastern Lebanon, Beirut is western Lebanon. Lebanon's state-run national news agency said local gunmen tried to repel the Israeli force on the edge of the town of Nabi Sheet. It said Israeli warplanes were flying over the area. Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV reported Israeli forces tried to land 3 times in Nabi Sheet, and the 3rd attempt occurred after midnight. It was said to have been met inside the town by Hezbollah and local fighters who clashed with it. Nabi Sheet is a stronghold of the Hezbollah militant group. Hours earlier, the Israeli military had issued a warning to the people in Nabi Sheet and several nearby villages to evacuate. It was followed by a series of airstrikes. Edsel Diaz thinks that the gunfire is likely Israeli helicopter and gunship aircraft shooting Hezbollah targets in the southern suburb side of Beirut, and that the tracer fire is firing back at them. I don't know. That's what our viewer Edsel Diaz says. Thanks, Edsel, for writing in. Some of our viewers think there's some sort of a ground fighting that's been going on. Hey, a quick thanks to David Malesi. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, Heather Westbrook, thank you. Thanks so much to Sunburn 2007. Sunburn says, people seem to think someone in the U.S. is leaking troop info to Russia, who hands it to Iran. Do folks not know Russia has the same intelligence capabilities we do? Hey, thanks, Sunburn. I appreciate that very much. Sunburn 2007. Also, Jack, I'll say Jack S. 4. Thank you, Jack. Jack thinks the AA was a celebration because they think they took down a helicopter about 50 minutes ago. We have some different theories about the gunfire. Thank you, Brian. Thank you again, Jack. Thanks, Brian F., for the memberships. Thanks, Ruth Anderson, for being a member. Thanks, DMC. DMCD. Ken Ventures. Summer Breeze, thank you.
As the Iran conflict expands, there's reporting tonight that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for a potential military operation in Iran with U.S. backing. That's the Associated Press tonight. The Kurds are among the largest stateless ethnic group in the world, with roughly 30 million living as minorities in Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. The Kurds represent about 10% of the Iranian population. They make up about 15% of the population in Iraq. The groups in Iraqi Kurdistan have a long history of working with the U.S. during both the Iraq War and the battle against ISIS. Joining us now is Bafel Talabani, president of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the PUK. Mr. Talabani, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's first start big picture and paint the picture from where you sit of what you see with this war in Iran and what you think the implications are of it as it exists now.
We saw the hostilities start surprisingly, and it seems to be a massive escalation across all fronts. Kurdistan has come under attack from several different angles. And I'm not seeing any sign of a slowdown. If anything, I'm seeing an escalation.
So the U.S. is working on taking out missile sites and drone factories and that sort of thing. But as far as groups on the ground fighting the Iranians, there's reporting that thousands of Iranian Kurds are preparing for this operation. Where does that stand?
There are a lot of Iranian Kurds that deserve dignity, and they deserve perhaps better treatment. But as for any actual preparation and armed Kurds inside Iran, there are elements, and there's lots of political organization. But most of the most effective fighting forces are actually outside of Iran. They're on the borders here.
You had a conversation with President Trump. What was that like?
He was very charming. He was very kind. I could feel the emotion in his voice. He said that the Kurds were great fighters. My understanding is that the protection of their people in Iraq is paramount. He's very grateful for all the years that we have served and I have spent with your special forces.
You also talked to the Iranian foreign minister.
Yes.
What is their take on things from your call? Do you believe that...
this is a very cut-up interview. This is kind of strange, actually. That cut back there was very telling. I wonder how much of this is actually through and through from the interview.
That regime change is possible the way it's heading right now.
The foreign minister, His Excellency, expressed great disappointment, if I'm honest with you. He indicated that as far as they were concerned, the talks were going well. He implied that a technical group was supposed to sit together in the upcoming days to discuss technical matters. He indicated that this wasn't a war that they were looking forward to, but it was a war they would have to fight. It's definitely existential to them. I got the impression that they were open to some form of peaceful negotiation, which realistically is the only real solution to this issue. Regime change at the moment doesn't look on the cards from what I see. We've seen no uprisings anywhere. We've seen nothing of that. But it's early days. I expect this operation to be long and very difficult.
You think there are difficult days ahead. The president is suggesting that he would only accept unconditional surrender, in his words, to a reporter. So you don't see that right now, that this is on the cusp of happening?
I don't, sir. No, I don't see that right now. I think that the regime has been planning for this for 45 years, and you can expect a fierce resistance. The definition of regime change...
Well, they can put up as much of a resistance as they want, but based on what we've seen and what we're hearing, there's not much of them left. So, as I said before, I'm truly wondering how much longer this is going to go on for, because like they wiped out their entire navy. There's just nothing left. Their air bases are done. They just hit their main airport and they flattened it. So there's nothing left for them to hold on to at this point. And if they're just trying to draw out the U.S. and waste as many resources as possible, then I guess this could take a very long time, but I guess only time will tell. We have a video here. Several explosions seen in Iran as Israel warplanes strike Tehran. So as you can see, they're not stopping anytime soon.
Oh, well, we lost. I think. Oh, they might be switching their feed. We have another feed up there. Let me. All right. They probably will have another feed. I can switch the feed, but hang on one moment. I was just gonna change the headline anyway. Sometimes they, or actually, they'll probably go back to that feed after another thing. Hang on a moment. Let's put up for now. I have 2 Beirut feeds from Reuters. Here's one of them. If you give me a moment. There's Beirut from Reuters. Right there. And then, let's see what else here. Oh, we still have the other feed. We still have the other feed. It's just it's switched to a different channel. Oopsie. I did the wrong thing. Hang on, I'm going to get the other feed back up. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Yes, I have the original feedback.
Overall, it has been a pretty quiet day. There was a ton of gunfire for maybe a solid hour, 30 minutes or so ago. But in terms of anything happening, it's been pretty quiet. Maybe it's the calm before the storm. Maybe it truly is the end of the conflict here. Who knows at this point?
Yeah, the economy stuff seems, the oil stuff seems very serious. Juliana Martin says $5 a gallon is barbaric. Current prices, I'm looking here. U.S. West Texas crude went up over 12% and is at almost $91 a barrel. And Brent crude went up 8.5% in the day and is at over $92 a barrel.
Earlier this week, targeting Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan. Muwafaq, pardon my language. The ANTPY-2 is the primary ground-based air surveillance radar for the THAAD missile interception system, with this specific radar likely supporting THAAD batteries in Israel and in Jordan. So this is maybe 5 days ago. We heard initial reports of this, and I was waiting to get the confirmation. We've got the confirmation now. I've seen a bunch of different places talking about this. Seems to be confirmed at this point, 5 days later, that in fact, yes, on the first or second day of this conflict, you had this this massive radar get destroyed. The Iranians blew it up. That sucks. Yeah, big loss. I wonder, I just out of curiosity, how much does one of these cost? I would speculate that this thing costs a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, as most of the things do. They're spending hundreds of millions each day to fight this war, which is like kind of why it's better to get this shit over and done with. You would think. You would think. We got U.S. launching Middle East rescue missions.
Well, here in Dubai, Jesse, many people are not afraid of the war across the Persian Gulf that has stretched on for 6 days now. The Dubai Mall, the largest in the world, complete with a giant fish tank and all the big brands you like, Jesse, like Rolex, Tiffany. The mall is pretty packed. Here's a flight tracker showing all the airliners avoiding the Persian Gulf. There have been 23,000 canceled flights throughout the Middle East since this war started. The Iran war jeopardizing the $12 trillion global travel industry. There's a lot of great deals out there, Jesse. Some of the hotels aren't very packed. Perhaps you could pick out a nice deal and come here to Dubai. Jesse?
I think you're doing quite fine without me, Lucas. But stop by Tiffany and get yourself something nice. Stay safe.
Ooh, can't afford it.
Christian Leese is a high school student who was rescued from Abu Dhabi. Christian and his father join us now. All right, so Christian,
He's paralyzed.
What happened?
And as I also mentioned, the Financial Times had a report today where the energy minister of Qatar warned that war in the Middle East could bring down the economies of the world. He predicted that all Gulf energy exporters would shut down production within days and would drive oil to $150 a barrel. That's the energy minister of Qatar. The energy minister of Qatar forecasted that oil prices could go to $150 per barrel in 2 to 3 weeks if tankers and other merchant vessels are unable to pass through the Strait of Hormuz.
Things are gonna get fucked. If Iran decides to block that area or sink a vessel in a terror attack or something of that nature, like, it's already over or well on its way to over 90 a barrel, so we could be seeing 2.0 of that port being blocked again and things just driving up through the roof.
K. Cafecito says, time to buy an e-bike. Oh, another thing which you should keep an eye on, definitely. I want to mention this again. Our viewer limited state thinks it's just fear-mongering.
It could be. That's very true. It could be fear-mongering, but I do remember when a ship, well, it was pretty recently, a ship like crashed in that canal or whatever, capsized in the canal, and the price of everything went up drastically for that period of time. It corrected, but still.
Cheryl Leak, thanks Cheryl for subscribing. Cheryl says, it's almost $5 here, a gallon here in Southern California for regular gas, and I was being able to get gas for $4.05 a gallon 5 days ago.
A whole $1
Barry
increase
Eisler says,
in
yeah,
4
let's
days.
ensure all the ships will pay for that too, along with this war. We're only $41 trillion in debt. What's a little more? Scott Post says of the gunfire earlier in Beirut, Hezbollah is not the only group in the area. It could be one of their rivals trying to do something. One of our viewers said, do you think Russia or China will get involved? There's reporting today, we talked about before, that Russia was helping Iran with intelligence. I mean, there's nothing at this point to suggest that Russia or China is going to send like military to the region. But who knows what other kinds of things they might do. There was a report today talking about maybe China like doing things like giving spare parts to Iran and helping them other ways, you know. I don't know. Who knows what they're doing and will do. Yeah, I've seen a number of articles talk about this, and something to keep an eye out for is the water desalination plants that remove the salt and produce drinking water. And the idea is that possibly the most damaging thing Iran could do is go after these plants. The Economist, in an article this week, said an Iranian attack on Arab water desalination plants could have devastating consequences. Kuwait derives 90% of its drinking water from desalination, Oman 86% of its drinking water, Saudi Arabia 70%, and the UAE 42%. In leaked cables published in 2009, American diplomats estimated a successful attack on Saudi Arabia's Jubail desalination plant, which at that time provided Riyadh with 90% of its water supply, would force the kingdom to evacuate its capital within a week. Saudi Arabia has built more capacity since then, but desalination plants are highly vulnerable to missiles. So, just something to keep an eye on.
They're working on getting half.
I do wonder, is that something that Iran would consider?
Good luck. And what are you doing, sir? What's your deal? This is a bulk carrier. Another one that seems to have tried to make its way through. It seems like successfully. You're going to the Marshall Islands. It's always the Marshall Islands. What did I tell you? It's always the Marshall Islands. Another one. The Red Wing. The Red Wing. And they're just letting it rip. They're going in. They're running the gauntlet. Yeah, that's right. They're trying to make the Kessel run.
They're trying to make the Kessel run. They might as well be at this point. Look, it looks like things are going as planned for the most part, other than the crazy spike in fuel prices and everything else. But I guess we'll see what happens in the next few days here if Iran decides to do some out-of-pocket shit more than they already have been. They could attack boats or ships in the canal and really disrupt a lot of things, as said before. Or this could be pretty much it. I mean, nothing has really happened today. It's been pretty calm. It is the calm before the storm, or the end of the conflict. So anyway, that's going to do it for today's 8 p.m. live stream. Thank you all for joining on YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. Have a great rest of your day or night, depending on when you are watching and where you are from. Adios, everyone.
It's kind of impressive. It's like psychotic, but it's kind of impressive, actually. You have to respect it a little bit. You do. It takes balls. It takes balls.